Hey friends, welcome to Sabbath School Daily, where we have been studying from this lesson right here, Ephesians. This week we're studying from lesson number 8, which has the title, Christ-Shaped Lives and Spirit-Inspired Speech. And today is Wednesday's lesson, which has the title, The Holy Spirit in the Believer's Life. Today's lesson flows from yesterday's lesson, where we began studying Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25 onward, really 4:25 through 29, where we were talking about God's exhortations through the Apostle Paul to leave certain things behind. So you have the negative prompts, and then you have the positive prompts towards something and the rationale behind it. Today's lesson, it kind of sums up the great rationale, right? Why should we be doing these things? Why should we be getting better? Why should we be treating people better? Why should we not be tearing people down with our speech, but instead raising them up? Today's lesson brings forth verse 30. And this is what verse 30 says. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Again, do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. So here we find a few different pieces of information that are very telling, that are very important for us to emphasize. The first one is the fact that the Holy Spirit of God can be grieved. The lesson, it mentions this as the latter part of the lesson. I'm going to bring it to the forefront of what we're talking about. This verse right here is one of the greatest arguments for the personality of the Holy Spirit. There are several groups of people that deny the personality of the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Godhead, of the Trinity. This verse right here, in conjunction with so many more, but this verse right here, it tells us that the Holy Spirit can be grieved. He can become sad. This is Paul referencing a previous chapter of the Bible. I really think that Paul was going through Isaiah when he was writing this book here of Ephesians. Because in Isaiah chapter 63, verse 10, we find a similar thing being said. Because it says, but they rebelled and grieved his Holy Spirit, so he turned himself against them as an enemy. So you see here again, as it says in the Old Testament, in the book of Isaiah, we see that the Holy Spirit can be grieved. This is something that goes through and through the Bible. The Holy Spirit of God, it can be grieved. Not only this, but in several other texts, we find other traits of personality being applied to the Holy Spirit. He can be happy, he can be sad, he can be angry, he can be lied to, and these are things that can only be said about someone, not something. The Holy Spirit does not appear to be described as an energy or a vibe or a vibration or a power that emanates from God the Father. The Holy Spirit appears to be his own person, with his own volition, with his own personality. Here when we say person, I don't mean person in the sense of a human being. A person is really someone with a personality. So that entity is a person, right? A personality. And so here the Holy Spirit appears that way. The lesson does give us a pretty interesting quote from, it says here, God in three persons in the New Testament. And this is written by Paul Peterson, page 20. And this is what it says. The Spirit has his own will and chooses accordingly. He can be grieved and blasphemed against. Such expressions are not fit for a mere power or influence, but are characteristics of a person. Is the Spirit then a person just like you and me? No. We use limited human terminology to describe the divine, and the Spirit is what human beings can never be. So here it makes it clear that the Holy Spirit, while he is not comparable to a human being, we don't really know the essence of the Spirit on those terms. We don't know what he's made up of. We just don't know, friends. In fact, the lesson in the last paragraph, right before this quote, it says, we must tread with care in discussing the mystery of the Godhead. The Spirit is both one with and distinct from the Father and the Son. So we have to be very careful when we're trying to make very grandiose, absolute declarations, not only about the Holy Spirit, but about the Godhead, about Christ, about the Father. Friends, we're talking about things that we don't know. What we know is what the Bible has provided, and we have to be very careful not to attribute to that our own opinion, our own way of seeing things. We have to be careful to stick to what the Bible says and to that alone. In addition to that, the lesson also goes on a different route, and that's what it talks about in the beginning. It has to do with how it is possible to grieve the Holy Spirit by our words. You'll see that all the way from 25 to 29, the apostle, he is mentioning these things that people should stop being, things that they should begin being, start putting into practice, and the reason why they should do that. And at the end of it, he sums it up by saying that when we don't do that, when we treat other people in those ways, when we lie, when we speak badly about other people, when we steal, right? Those are the things that he mentions in the previous verses. We then grieve the Holy Spirit. So if we want to make him happy, if we don't want to make him sad, if we don't want to grieve him, then that's what we're going to do. I really appreciate the way that the apostle here, he reflects how the Holy Spirit feels, how he reacts to these sins, because these things, after all, stealing, lying, tearing people down with our words, these are sins. And yet the apostle here, he doesn't say that the Holy Spirit immediately abandons whoever does these things. The truth, friends, is that we're going to fall sometimes. Can you imagine what kind of roller coaster it would be if every single time that we committed a sin, God abandoned us? So we see in the Bible that God didn't abandon people as they sinned. Of course, God won't remain in a place where he's unwanted. So I hope that you see what I'm saying. I'm not saying here that, oh, you're free to sin, that God is okay with that. He's going to stick by you no matter what. No, because as we sin, we're telling God something. We're demonstrating, perhaps not by words, but by action, that we don't want his presence in our life. That's the effect of rebellion in the Christian life. As we rebel, our heart grows colder, our conscience grows harder to the touch of the Holy Spirit. However, I don't believe that the Holy Spirit abandons us as soon as we trip and we fall. God fights for us. The Holy Spirit fights for us. And so as we are convicted of sin, and the Bible tells us that it is the Holy Spirit of God that convicts us of sin. And so as we're convicted of sin, we have the Holy Spirit of God fighting for us, battling for us. So you see that you're not abandoned. He's grieved. Of course he's sad, but you're not abandoned in these moments. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so please make the distinction, right? So as we continue towards the end of this lesson, tomorrow we're going to study the last 2 verses of this chapter, and we're going to see how it kind of sums up the idea. But in today's lesson, please don't miss out on the rest that it says. There's quite a bit of content in today's lesson, so I urge you to go through it, read it, look up the text, and I'm sure that it will bring even more to the forefront of your study. Also, please remember to like, to share, and to subscribe to our videos. Remember to comment down below if you have any questions or considerations. I'd love to interact with you that way, and I'll see you again here tomorrow for another study of Sabbath School Daily.